The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of Luminara Prime Station. Taemin rushed toward the council chamber, his heart pounding. He had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years now, but he had never heard that alarm before. It meant only one thing. Someone was dying. The chamber doors opened and Taemin saw the chaos inside. Representatives from 17 different species were shouting, their translation devices creating a storm of noise. At the center of it all stood a Valrine, a gentle creature that looked like a mix between a deer and a bird. The Valrine was shaking, its feathers puffed up in terror. Taemin took his seat and activated his console. The screen showed images that made his stomach turn. Planets burning, cities in ruins, ships torn apart like paper, and everywhere the black swarm of creatures that looked like nightmares made real. The Valrine representative, whose name was Miral, spoke through tears. Her voice trembled as the translator converted her words. "Please, our worlds are dying. The Krith swarm has taken 2 of our colonies. Valrine Prime will fall in 3 weeks. We have no weapons. We have no warriors. We only have hope that someone will help us." The council members looked at each other with uncomfortable expressions. The Torlan representative, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, spoke first. "This is terrible, but we must think carefully. The Krith have never been defeated. Perhaps we should offer the Valrine sanctuary instead." "Sanctuary?" Moral's voice cracked. "You want us to abandon our home? Our history? Everything we are?" A reptilian delegate from Zen Prime nodded slowly. "It is practical. The Council's defense forces would take 4 months to gather. By then your world will be gone. Then send them now," Miral begged. "It is not so simple," another voice said. "The Krith are dangerous. We must plan. We must strategize. We cannot rush into war." Taemin watched the debate continue for another hour. Plans were suggested and rejected. Ideas were discussed and dismissed. The whole time Miral stood there, hope draining from her eyes with each passing minute. Finally, she looked directly at Taemin. "What about the humans?" she asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Torlan delegate spoke carefully. "The humans are new to the council. They have been members for only 50 years. Their methods are unconventional." "You mean violent?" Miral said, her voice desperate. "I have read the reports. Earth is a death world. Humans are predators. They fight. They know war." She turned fully toward Taemin. "Will you help us?" Taemin felt every eye in the chamber turn to him. He knew what they were thinking. Humans were dangerous, aggressive, barely civilized in the eyes of species who had conquered war millennia ago. But right now, none of that mattered. "I need to contact Earth," Taemin said. "I will have an answer within the hour." He left the chamber and went to his private communication room. His hand shook slightly as he established a secure link to Earth Defense Command. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Jiwoo, commander of the 3rd Fleet. She looked like she had been expecting his call. "Admiral," Taemin began, "we have a situation." He explained everything quickly. The Valrine, the Krith swarm, the Council's hesitation. Jiwoo listened without interrupting, her dark eyes focused and intense. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "How long do they have?" Jiwoo asked. 3 weeks, maybe less." "How far is their system from here?" 17 days at maximum speed." Jiwoo nodded. "Tell them we're coming. 3rd Fleet will deploy within 6 hours." Taemin felt relief flood through him, but he had to ask. "Admiral, the Council is afraid of the Krith. They've never been beaten. Are you sure about this?" Jiwoo's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, someone is asking for help." "That's all I need to know. We'll handle the rest." The connection ended. Taemin sat in the quiet room for a moment, letting the weight of what just happened settle over him. Earth was going to war. For aliens they barely knew. For a species that most of the galaxy looked down on as primitive warmongers, this was the most human thing possible. He returned to the council chamber. The debate was still going in circles. Taemin walked to the center and spoke clearly. "The 3rd Fleet of Earth will deploy to defend Valrine Prime. They will arrive in 17 days. The chamber erupted. The Torlan representative stood quickly. "You cannot make this decision alone. This affects the entire council." "The council has spent 3 hours talking while people die," Taemin said calmly. "Earth has spent 3 minutes deciding to act. Which approach do you think the Valrine prefer?" Miral stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe, or hope. Possibly both. Your fleet, how large is it? 47 warships, including the dreadnought Indomitable. That is not enough, the Zen delegate said. The Krith have hundreds of bioships. It's what we have, and it's on the way, Taemin replied. Miral approached him slowly. Up close, he could see how exhausted she was. Why? She asked softly. Your people have no reason to help us. We have treated you with suspicion since you joined the council. We have called you dangerous, uncivilized. Why would you risk your lives for us? Taemin thought about how to answer that. He thought about Earth's history, about how humans had always run toward danger instead of away from it, about how they had a strange habit of helping even when it cost them everything. Because you asked, he said simply, because it's the right thing to do. And because humans learned a long time ago that if you can help, you should. It's that simple. Miral's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. Thank you, she whispered. That same hour, on Earth, the Sol orbital shipyards erupted with activity. Admiral Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched through the massive windows as 46 other ships moved into formation. Each one was built for war. Each one carried weapons that made Council species uncomfortable. Each one was crewed by humans who had volunteered for this mission. Her second-in-command, Captain Hyun-woo, stood beside her. He looked troubled. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Always. We're risking a lot for aliens who don't even like us. The Valrine have voted against us in council sessions. They supported trade restrictions on human technology. They called us warmongers. Why are we doing this? Jiwoo turned to look at him. Because they need help and we can give it. Because someone has to stand up to the monsters and the rest of the galaxy is too scared. Because this is what humanity does, she paused. And because when this is over, they'll know exactly who we are. Not what they think we are, but who we really are. Hyun-woo nodded slowly. Understood, Admiral. Below them, in the communications bay, Lieutenant Bora established a direct link to Valrine Prime. The face that appeared was Miral's, but she was somewhere different now. Somewhere with smoke and fire visible through windows behind her. This is Lieutenant Bora of Earth's Third Fleet. We're coming to help you. Can you hear me? Miral nodded, apparently unable to speak. Listen to me carefully, Bora said, her voice gentle but firm. You need to hold on for 17 days. Can you do that? I don't know. The shields are failing. The Krith are everywhere, and you're going to make it. You have to. We're coming as fast as we can. Bora leaned closer to the screen. What's your name? Miral, I'm a scientist. I study stellar formations. I'm not a soldier, neither am I normally. I'm a communications officer. But right now, you're the bravest person in this conversation because you're living through something I can't imagine. So stay brave, Miral, 17 days. We'll be there. Miral wiped her eyes with a delicate hand. I've heard humans are frightening. That you come from a world of death and violence. Bora smiled sadly. Maybe that's true, but it also means we know how to fight death and violence, and we're very good at it. So hold on, Miral, the cavalry is coming. The connection ended. Bora sat back in her chair, her heart heavy. 17 days. Would it be enough? On the bridge, Admiral Jiwoo gave the order that would change everything. All ships prepare for departure. Set course for Valrine Prime. Maximum speed. The Third Fleet of Earth left orbit in perfect formation. Behind them, billions of humans watched and worried. Ahead of them, an enemy waited that had never been defeated. And on Valrine Prime, people who had never believed in miracles started to hope that maybe, just maybe, the humans from the Death World could do the impossible. The journey had begun. The Indomitable cut through space like a knife through water. Behind it, 46 warships followed in tight formation. Inside the flagship, Admiral Jiwoo walked through corridors filled with activity. Soldiers ran past her carrying equipment. Engineers shouted orders. The whole ship hummed with purpose. She made her way to the war room where her senior officers waited. They stood around a holographic display showing the Valrine system. The image was not pretty. Red dots marked Krith positions. There were so many red dots that the display looked like it had a disease. Report, Jiwoo said as she entered. Commander Subin, the tactical officer, pointed at the display. Her fingers moved through the hologram, pulling up data. The Krith have approximately 300 bioships surrounding Valrine Prime. They're using a standard siege pattern, crushing the orbital defenses first, then moving to the surface. Standard for them, maybe, Captain Hyunwoo muttered. We've never fought them before. No one has fought them and won, Subin corrected. That's an important difference. Every species that encountered the Krith either ran or died. The Council species chose to run. They mark Krith territory on their maps and avoid it. Jiwoo studied the display carefully. The Krith positions did follow a pattern. They surrounded the planet like a net, tightening slowly. It was efficient, brutal, and it had probably worked 1,000 times before. What do we know about their ships? She asked. Dr. Youngjia, the chief medical officer, pulled up another image. It showed a Krith bioship in detail. The thing looked like someone's nightmare had learned to fly. Organic armor covered its surface. Weapons that fired living plasma grew from its sides. The whole ship pulsed like it was breathing. They're not built, Youngjia explained. They're grown. Each ship is part of the hive mind. They don't think individually. They're controlled by larger command ships that coordinate their movements. So if we kill the command ships? Hyunwoo asked. The smaller ships become confused, disorganized. But killing command ships isn't easy. They're massive and heavily protected. Jiwoo nodded slowly. She had read every report about the Krith she could find. The pattern was always the same. They arrived in overwhelming numbers. They surrounded their target. They ground down any resistance through sheer mass. Species that tried to fight them face-to-face lost. Species that tried to defend their worlds died. But no one had tried to attack them like humans would. We're not going to fight defensively, Jiwoo said. The Valrine already tried that. It didn't work. We're going to hit them hard and fast. Make them react to us instead of executing their plan. That's risky, Subin said, but she was smiling slightly. I like it. In the hangar bay, pilot Jae-hwan inspected his fighter. The Raptor-class ships were humanity's pride. Fast, maneuverable, and armed with missiles that could punch through almost anything. Jae-hwan had been flying them for 10 years. He knew every wire, every system, every trick they could perform. His squadron gathered around him. 20 pilots, all young, all skilled, all volunteers. They looked nervous. Jae-hwan couldn't blame them. Fighting the unbeatable sounded good in stories. In reality, it was terrifying. Listen up, Jae-hwan said, his voice carrying across the hangar. I know what you're thinking. 300 enemy ships against our 47. Bad odds. Impossible odds, even. He paused. But here's what the Krith don't know. They've never fought Earth pilots before. They've never seen how we fly. They've never experienced what happens when humans decide that no isn't an answer they'll accept. One of the younger pilots raised her hand. Sir, what if we can't win? Then we make sure the Valrine escape, Jae-hwan said simply. That's the mission. Save them. Everything else is just details. Deep in the ship's engineering section, Hae-won worked on modifications to the weapons systems. She had been Earth's chief weapons engineer for 5 years. She knew every gun, every missile, every piece of destructive equipment humanity had created. And she knew they needed to be better. Her team worked around her, adjusting power systems and recalibrating targeting computers. They were pushing the weapons beyond their normal limits. It was dangerous. The systems might overload. But they needed every advantage they could get. How much more power can we squeeze out? One of her assistants asked. Hae-won checked her calculations again. 20% more on the main cannons, 30% on the point defense systems. But we can only maintain it for short bursts. Any longer, and we'll melt the power conduits. Is it enough? It has to be. In the medical bay, Dr. Youngjia prepared for what was coming. She organized supplies, checked equipment, and briefed her staff. She had been a military doctor for 20 years. She had seen combat. She had treated terrible wounds. But something about this mission felt different. We need to prepare for Valrine casualties too, she told her team. Their biology is different from ours. I've been studying their medical data, but we're going into unknown territory. Do your best, ask questions, and remember that a life is a life, regardless of what species it belongs to. One of the nurses looked worried. Doctor, what if the Krith board us? Young Jaw's expression hardened. Then we'll have Marines in here protecting us, and we'll keep working. We don't stop. Ever. Understood? Down in the Marine section, Master Sergeant Dong Hyun drilled his troops. They practiced boarding actions, defensive positions, and close combat. The Marines were Earth's ground fighters. If the Krith got onto human ships, they would have to deal with these soldiers. Dong Hyun was old by Marine standards. 45. Years old, with scars on his face and arms that told stories of a dozen battles. He had fought in the colony wars. He had defended stations against pirates. He had seen things that gave him nightmares. But he kept serving because someone had to. The Krith don't fight like anything you've trained against, he told his Marines. They're fast. They're vicious. They don't fear death because they're part of a hive mind. Each one of them is just a cell in a larger organism. How do we kill them, Sergeant? A young Marine asked. The same way we kill everything else, with bullets, determination, and refusing to give up. They might be part of a hive, but we're part of humanity, and we're tougher than we look. The days passed quickly. The fleet moved through space at speeds that pushed their engines to the limit. In the mess halls, soldiers ate and talked quietly. In the recreation areas, people tried to relax before the storm. In the chapels, both religious and secular, people prepared themselves mentally for what was coming. Lieutenant Bora maintained contact with Valrine Prime. Every day she spoke with Miral. Every day the situation got worse. The shields are at 40%, Miral reported, her voice tired. We've lost 2 more orbital platforms. The Krith are landing on the northern continent. There are reports of what they do to captured populations. Bora wanted to offer comfort, but she couldn't lie. How many days until we arrive? 9 days. Can you hold for 9 more days? I don't know. Maybe. The military is evacuating cities. We're moving people underground. But there are so many people and we don't have much time. You're doing everything right, Bora assured her. Keep moving people, keep them safe. We're coming as fast as we can. After the call ended, Bora sat in silence. 9 more days. She wondered if it would be enough. She wondered if anything would be enough. In her private quarters, Admiral Jiwoo reviewed the battle plans one more time. Subin had created 17 different scenarios, each one accounting for different Krith responses. None of them looked good. The best scenario showed a 30% casualty rate for the human fleet. The worst showed complete annihilation, but buried in the data was something interesting. The Krith had a pattern. They always surrounded their prey. They always used numerical superiority. They always executed the same crushing strategy. It worked because their enemies always tried to defend. What if someone attacked instead? Jiwoo called Subin to her quarters. The tactical officer arrived within minutes. I need you to run a new scenario, Jiwoo said. Assume we don't try to fight the entire Krith force. Assume we punch straight through their formation, ignoring the ships on the sides, and head directly for their command vessels. Subin's eyes widened. Admiral, that would leave us surrounded. Yes, but it would also disrupt their coordination. If we can destroy the command ships, the rest of the swarm becomes confused. We could turn a battle of attrition into a surgical strike. It's incredibly risky. We could lose half the fleet in the first hour. Run the numbers, tell me if it's possible. Subin worked through the night. When she returned in the morning, she looked exhausted but excited. It could work. If we move, fast enough, if we concentrate our fire perfectly. If we're willing to take heavy losses, it could work. Maybe. What are the odds? 34% chance of success. Jiwoo smiled grimly. I've faced worse odds. The final days of the journey were tense. Everyone knew they were approaching the battle. Training increased. Equipment checks became constant. People wrote letters home just in case they didn't come back. On the 6th day, they received a message from the council. It was from Taimin. His face appeared on the screen, looking haggard. Admiral, the council has officially condemned Earth's unilateral military action. They say you're risking galactic peace. They've threatened sanctions. He paused, then smiled slightly. The view through the Indomitable's windows looked like hell had opened up in space. Valrine Prime hung in the distance, beautiful and blue but surrounded by a nightmare. The Krith bioships moved around it like insects around a dying animal. They were everywhere. Hundreds of dark shapes pulsing with sickly light, each one hungry for destruction. Admiral Ji-Woo stood on the bridge, her hands gripped behind her back. She looked calm, but inside her heart raced. 300 enemy ships. Her sensors showed them clearly now. They were bigger than she had expected, uglier, more alien. They looked like they had been grown in some terrible factory, all chitin armor and organic weapons. "Admiral, the Krith have detected us," Su Bin reported from her station. They're not changing formation. They're staying focused on the planet. They don't think we're a threat, Hyunwoo said. They've never lost before. Why would they worry about 47 ships? Ji-Woo smiled without humor. Then let's teach them a new lesson. All ships execute attack pattern Delta 7. Target the command vessels. Weapons free. The Third Fleet moved forward. Not cautiously. Not defensively. They accelerated toward the Krith swarm like missiles. On 47 ships, weapon systems powered up. Targeting computers locked on. Human hands gripped controls ready for war. The Krith finally reacted. 200 bioships turned away from Valrine Prime and moved to intercept. They came in waves, organic engines propelling them forward. As they got closer, the sensors showed more details. Weapons ports opening, bioplasma building up, armor plates shifting to protect vital areas. Enemy ships in range in 30 seconds, Su Bin counted down. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Fire, Ji-Woo said calmly. The space between the fleets lit up with human weapons. Missiles streaked out by the hundreds, leaving trails of fire. Energy beams lanced through the darkness, invisible except where they hit their targets. Point defense systems created walls of bullets that looked like solid light. The first wave of Krith bioships flew directly into this wall of death. They had never experienced anything like human weapons before. The missiles hit with devastating force, punching through organic armor and exploding inside ship bodies. The energy beams burned through vital systems. The bullets found weak points and tore them open. 15 Krith bioships died in the first 10 seconds. On Valrine Prime, Morale watched her scanners with disbelief. She had seen the Krith destroy their defenses effortlessly. Their bioships had shrugged off Valrine weapons like they were toys. But the human weapons were tearing them apart. What are they doing? Another Valrine scientist asked, staring at the same display. They're attacking, Morale whispered. They're not defending. They're attacking. The Krith adapted quickly. The second wave came in more carefully, using evasive maneuvers. They spread out, making themselves harder to hit. They started firing their own weapons. Bioplasma bolts shot through space, green and sickly looking, seeking human ships. The first bolt hit a human frigate. The ship's shields flared bright, absorbed most of the impact, but some of the plasma got through. It ate into the hull like acid. Damage reports flooded the communications channels. Frigate Daedalus reporting hull breach on Deck 3. A voice crackled over the radio. Sealing compartments. We're still in the fight. More plasma bolts came. More human ships took damage. But the fleet didn't slow down. They kept accelerating toward the Krith formation, their weapons never stopping. For every hit they took, they delivered 10 back. In the Indomitable's hangar bay, Jae-Hwan climbed into his fighter. Around him, his squadron did the same. 20 Raptor-class ships, each one fast and deadly, each one piloted by someone who had volunteered for this mission. Raptor Squadron, launch, Jae-Hwan ordered. The fighters shot out of the hangar like bullets. Space opened up around them, full of enemy ships and friendly ships and weapons fire going in every direction. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Stay in formation, Jae-Hwan commanded. Watch each other's backs. Target the command ships only. Everything else is secondary. The squadron moved as one. They had trained together for years. They knew each other's flying styles, knew how to work as a team. They dove between Krith bioships, too fast for the enemy targeting systems to track. Their missiles launched at close range, hitting weak points that the bigger ships couldn't reach. A Krith bioship exploded in front of Jae-Hwan. He flew through the debris, his fighter's shield sparking from the impacts. Behind him, his wingman followed, both of them moving like dancers in a deadly ballet. Command ship dead ahead, one of his pilots called out. Big one. Really big one, Jae-Hwan saw it. The Krith command vessel was 3 times bigger than any other bioship. It pulsed with light, probably sending signals to coordinate the swarm. Destroying it would throw the whole area into confusion. All fighters, concentrate fire on my mark, Jaehwan said. He lined up his shot, waited for exactly the right moment. Mark! 20 fighters fired at once. 40 missiles streaked toward the command ship. Most hit. The massive vessel shuddered, its armor cracking. But it didn't die. It turned, focusing on the fighters, its weapons charging. Break! Break! Jaehwan shouted. The squadron scattered. Bioplasma bolts filled the space where they had been. One fighter wasn't fast enough. The plasma caught its wing and the ship spun out of control, disappearing into the chaos of the battle. Jaehwan's heart clenched, but he couldn't stop. Second pass. Hit it again. On the Indomitable, the bridge shook from impacts. The massive dreadnought was taking hits from multiple Krith ships. Its shields were holding, but they were at 60% and dropping. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The smell of burnt electronics filled the air. Forward shields at 55%, Subin reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. Hull integrity at 92%. We're taking damage but staying in the fight. Jiwoo watched the battle display. The human fleet had penetrated deep into the Krith formation. They were surrounded now, just as she had planned. But they were also dying. 2 frigates were gone. A destroyer had lost engines and was drifting. The cruiser Hammer was on fire, its crew fighting to save it. But they were winning. 30 Krith bioships dead, 40, 50. The human weapons were more efficient than anyone had expected. The Krith's organic armor was tough, but it couldn't handle focused fire from multiple sources. Every time a human ship targeted a Krith vessel, it died quickly. Their formations are breaking down, Subin said with excitement in her voice. We've destroyed 4 command ships. The smaller bioships are losing coordination. Press the advantage, Jiwoo ordered. All ships target the remaining command vessels. Ignore the smaller ships unless they're directly threatening us. The strategy was working. The Krith swarm, so effective when coordinated, was becoming disorganized. Bioships moved without purpose, colliding with each other, firing at random. The humans exploited every mistake, every moment of confusion. But the Krith were learning. A new wave of bioships came at the human fleet from below, catching them by surprise. These ships moved differently, faster, more purposefully. They targeted the human destroyers first, concentrating their fire. The destroyer Relentless took 12 plasma hits in rapid succession. Its shields collapsed. Its hull melted. The ship broke apart and hundreds of lives ended in an instant. Relentless is gone, Hyunwoo reported, his voice tight. Destroyer Valiant is taking heavy fire. Jiwoo made a quick decision. All ships tighten formation. Overlap shields. Use point defense to protect each other. The human fleet pulled closer together. Ships that had been spread out now moved within a few kilometers of each other. Their shields, designed to protect individual ships, now created overlapping fields. When a Krith plasma bolt came in, multiple point defense systems fired at it, destroying it before impact. The tactic worked. The casualties stopped climbing. But the Krith kept coming. Deep in the Indomitable, Master Sergeant Dong Hyun heard the impact alarms. The Krith were trying to board. Somehow, some of their smaller bioships had attached to the hull. He could hear them cutting through. All Marines to Section 7, Dong Hyun ordered. Heavy weapons. Full armor. This is not a drill. His Marines moved quickly. They had trained for this scenario 100 times. Boarding actions were brutal, close range, terrifying. But they were ready. The hull section exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris, shapes moved. Krith warriors, each one the size of a large dog. Covered in chitinous armor with claws that could cut through steel. They poured through the breach like water from a broken dam. Fire! Dong-hyun shouted. The corridor lit up with gunfire. Bullets tore into the Krith warriors. The creatures screamed, a sound that wasn't quite insect and wasn't quite animal. They kept coming, even as their bodies broke apart. They had no fear, no sense of self-preservation. They were parts of a hive, and the hive wanted in. A Krith warrior made it through the gunfire. It leaped at a young Marine, claws extended. Dong-hyun stepped between them, his combat knife already moving. The blade found a weak point between armor plates. The creature fell. Hold the line! Dong-hyun bellowed. Don't let them advance. More Krith came. The Marines fired until their weapons were hot enough to burn skin. They fell back when necessary, using the corridor's choke points to their advantage. Bodies piled up. The space around Valrine Prime had become a graveyard. Debris drifted everywhere. Broken pieces of Krith bioships mixed with torn metal from human vessels. The bodies of the dead floated in the darkness, frozen and silent. But the battle continued. Admiral Jiwoo studied her display with tired eyes. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her uniform was stained with sweat and blood from helping carry wounded crew members to medical. Around her, the bridge crew looked just as exhausted. But none of them had given up. "Status report," she said, her voice hoarse. Commander Subin pulled up the numbers. They weren't good. Third Fleet has 19 operational ships remaining. The Indomitable is at 15% shields. Hull integrity at 63%. We've lost 5 ships completely. 3 more are too damaged to fight. And the Krith? 172 bioships confirmed destroyed. But there are still about 128 active around the planet. They're reorganizing. We hurt them badly, but they're not finished. Jiwoo looked at the display showing Valrine Prime. The planet was beautiful. Green continents. Blue oceans. White clouds. Millions of innocent people down there, waiting to be saved or slaughtered. The Krith had already landed on the northern continent. Reports said they were consuming everything in their path. "We need to get to the surface," Jiwoo said. "We need to evacuate as many Valrine as possible." "Admiral, if we split our forces, the Krith will destroy us," Captain Hyun-woo warned. "We're barely holding them off as it is." "Then we don't split forces. We all go. The entire fleet punches through to the planet. We create a corridor and hold it long enough to get transports down." Subin ran calculations on her console. Her fingers moved quickly, testing different scenarios. Finally, she looked up. "It's possible, but we'd have to concentrate all our firepower on one point. Leave our flanks completely exposed. The Krith would surround us." "We're already surrounded," Jiwoo said. "At least this way, we're surrounded while doing something useful. Calculate the best approach vector. We move in 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Ships repositioned. Weapons recharged. Pilots prepared for another sortie. In the medical bay, Dr. Youngjia stabilized as many patients as she could. In the marine sections, Dong-hyun and his soldiers checked weapons and armor. Everyone knew what was coming. Lieutenant Bora contacted morale on Valrine Prime. The connection was fuzzy with interference, but it worked. "Morale, we're coming down," Bora said. "Start gathering everyone you can at the primary spaceports. We'll send transports as soon as we establish a corridor." Morale's face on the screen showed hope and terror mixed together. "How long?" 20 minutes. Maybe less. Can you gather people in 20 minutes? "We've been preparing evacuation sites since you arrived. But there are so many people, millions, we can't get everyone." Bora felt her heart break a little. "We'll take as many as we can. I promise. Every single person we can fit on our ships. Just get them ready." The connection cut out. Bora sat back, trying not to think about the millions they couldn't save. Trying to focus on the thousands they could. On the bridge, Jiwoo gave the order. "All ships execute breakthrough maneuver. Maximum speed. Target any Krith ship that gets in our way. We don't stop until we reach the planet." The 19 ships of the Third Fleet moved as one. They accelerated toward Valrine Prime, weapons firing constantly. The Krith, sensing their intention, moved to intercept. Bioships came from all directions, trying to close the gap. The next hour was the most brutal fighting humanity had ever experienced. The fleet pushed forward, taking hits from every angle. Ships that were already damaged took more damage. Hull breaches became common. Fires broke out. People died. The frigate Seoul took a direct hit to its engine core. The explosion tore the ship in half. 300 crew members gone in an instant. The destroyer Torch lost all power and began drifting. The cruiser Iron Will collided with a Krith bioship, both vessels exploding in a ball of fire. But the fleet kept moving. Jae-hwan and Raptor Squadron flew ahead, clearing a path. They targeted any Krith ship that threatened the larger vessels. Their missiles and guns never stopped firing. Jae-hwan's fighter took hits that should have destroyed it. But somehow it kept flying. Somehow he kept flying. Almost there, he called over the radio. 60 seconds to the planet's atmosphere. The Indomitable led the charge. The massive dreadnought absorbed hits that would have destroyed smaller ships. Its armor was scarred. Its shields were failing. But Admiral Jiwoo stood on the bridge, refusing to back down. "Shields at 5%, Subin reported. "We're taking hits directly to the hull now." An explosion rocked the bridge. Consoles exploded. People were thrown from their stations. Jiwoo held onto her chair, her ears ringing. When the smoke cleared, she saw Hyunwoo lying on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. "Medical team to the bridge. Jiwoo shouted. She ran to her second-in-command, pressed her hands against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me, Hyunwoo. That's an order." He looked up at her, his face pale. Did we make it?" Jiwoo looked at the main screen. Valrine Prime filled the view. They had broken through. The fleet was entering orbit. "We made it," she said. "You got us here." Medical teams rushed onto the bridge. They took over, treating Hyunwoo, moving him carefully onto a stretcher. Jiwoo watched them go, then forced herself to focus. They weren't done yet. "Launch all transports," she ordered. "Get them to the surface. Load as many Valrine as possible." The human transport ships descended through the atmosphere. On the surface, Valrine gathered at the spaceports by the thousands. They looked up at the sky, watching the human ships come down like metal angels. Around them, their world was dying. Smoke rose from cities where the Krith had landed. Screams echoed in the distance, but the humans had come. Miral stood at the main spaceport in the capital city. She had organized the evacuation with other Valrine leaders. They had prioritized children first, then the elderly, then whoever could fit. It wasn't fair. It would never be fair. But it was all they could do. The first transport landed. Its ramp lowered. A human soldier stood there, gesturing frantically. "Move! Move, we don't have much time." The Valrine rushed forward. Parents pushed children onto the ship. Elderly Valrine hobbled up the ramp as fast as they could. The transport filled quickly. Too quickly. There were still thousands waiting. "I'm sorry," the human soldier said, his face twisted with pain. "I'm so sorry. We'll come back. I promise we'll come back." The transport lifted off, packed with Valrine refugees. Another one landed immediately. Then another. The humans were moving as fast as they could, taking trip after trip, saving everyone they could reach. In orbit, the remaining human ships formed a defensive sphere around the transport's flight path. The Krith kept attacking, trying to reach the vulnerable transport ships. Every time a bioship got close, human weapons tore it apart. The Indomitable took the worst of it. The massive dreadnought positioned itself directly in the path of the heaviest Krith assault. It became a shield for the entire operation, absorbing punishment that would have destroyed 10 other ships. "Hull integrity at 40%, Subin reported. Her station was barely functional. "We can't take much more." "We don't need much more," Jiwoo said. "We just need enough." On the lower decks, Donghyun fought another boarding action. The Krith had breached 3 more sections. His Marines were spread thin, defending multiple positions simultaneously. He moved from battle to battle, helping wherever the fighting was worst. A young Marine fell beside him, killed by Krith claws. Donghyun didn't have time to mourn. He picked up the dead soldier's weapon and kept fighting. His body ached. His wounds from the earlier battle had reopened. But he didn't stop. "Sergeant, Section 12 is being overrun," a voice crackled over his radio. Donghyun ran toward Section 12. His legs burned. His lungs screamed for air. He burst into the corridor and saw his Marines falling back, being pushed by a wave of Krith warriors. "Hold here," he shouted, taking position. He fired his weapon in controlled bursts, making every shot count. The Marines rallied around him, their fear turning into determination. The Krith came in waves. The Marines met each wave with bullets and grenades. The corridor filled with bodies and smoke. But the line held. In the medical bay, Dr. Youngja had run out of space. Wounded covered every surface. She moved from patient to patient, doing what she could. Some she could save. Some she couldn't. She worked until her hands shook from exhaustion. A young Valrine was brought in, injured in the evacuation. Youngja had never treated a Valrine before, but anatomy was anatomy. She found the bleeding and stopped it. She set broken bones. She did her job. "Doctor, we're out of plasma for transfusions," a nurse called out. Youngja made a decision. "Use mine. I'm universal donor. Take what you need, but doctor, do it." We don't have time to argue. On the surface, the last transports were loading. Miral helped children onto the ships, making sure none were left behind. She had been working for hours. Her body was exhausted. But she kept going. A small Valrine child, no more than 5 years old, was crying for her parents. Miral looked around but couldn't see any adults claiming the child. The Krith were less than a kilometer away now. She could hear them. "Come with me," Miral said gently, picking up the child. The medical ship was crowded beyond capacity. Wounded humans lay beside rescued Valrine. Dr. Youngjaw moved through the corridors, checking on patients. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Her uniform was stained with blood from a dozen different species. But she kept working. Master Sergeant Dong Hyun sat on a medical bed watching her work. His wounds had been treated, but he refused to rest properly. Too many of his Marines were hurt. Too many hadn't made it back at all. "Doctor, you should sleep," he said quietly. Youngjaw didn't look up from the Valrine child she was treating. "I'll sleep when everyone's stable. How are your ribs? Hurts to breathe." "But I'm alive." He paused. "A lot of good people aren't." "I know," Youngjaw said softly. "I know." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Ji-woo reviewed casualty reports. The numbers made her heart heavy. 14 ships lost. Over 3,000 crew members dead. Twice that many wounded. The Third Fleet had been destroyed. What remained was barely a fighting force. But 40,000 Valrine were alive. Commander Subin approached her. The tactical officer's face was bruised from the bridge explosion. Her arm was in a sling. But she still carried her data pad, still did her job. "Admiral, we've received a message from Luminara Prime. The Council wants to speak with you." Ji-woo almost laughed. "Of course they do. Put them through." The screen activated, showing the Council chamber. Ambassador Tae-min stood at his position, but this time, every other Council member was standing too. The Torlan representative spoke first. "Admiral Ji-woo, the Council has been monitoring your battle. We did not think it was possible. The Krith have never been defeated. Tell that to the 172 bioships we destroyed," Ji-woo said flatly, "or the 40,000 Valrine we saved." Another Council member, one she didn't recognize, spoke up. "Your casualties were severe. Your fleet is in ruins. Was it worth the cost?" Ji-woo's expression hardened. "Ask the Valrine we rescued. Ask the children who still have a future because we were willing to fight. Yes, it was worth it." Tae-min stepped forward. "Admiral, the Council wishes to extend formal recognition of humanity's actions. They also want to offer assistance with repairs and medical support." "We'll accept the medical support," Ji-woo said, "but the repairs we'll handle ourselves. We don't need the Council's approval for doing what was right." She ended the transmission. Subin looked at her with a slight smile. "You realize you just insulted the entire Galactic Council? They earned it. They debated while people died. We acted. That's the difference." The remnants of the Third Fleet limped toward Luminara Prime. The journey took a week of treating wounded, repairing ships, and mourning the dead. A week of Valrine refugees trying to understand what had happened to their lives. A week of humans wondering if they had done enough. Lieutenant Bora spent most of that week with morale. The Valrine scientist was struggling. She had lost her world, her home, most of her people. But she was alive, and she couldn't stop thinking about why. "Your people are terrifying," Miral said one day, sitting in the transport's observation deck. "I've been reading human history, your wars, your violence, the way you kill each other." "I know," Bora said quietly. "We're not perfect. We never claimed to be. But you came anyway. You risked everything for us. Why?" Bora was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone had to. Because when we heard your call for help, we couldn't ignore it. That's who we are. We fight. We protect. Even when it costs us everything." Miral looked out at the stars. "The Krith will finish consuming my world. Everything we built. Everything we were. Gone. Your people aren't gone. 40,000 of you survived. That's enough to rebuild. To remember. To honor those who didn't make it. Will you help us when we try to rebuild?" Bora smiled sadly. "Of course, that's what friends do." When the fleet arrived at Luminara Prime, they were greeted by something none of them expected. Thousands of ships from different species waited in orbit. Not warships, medical vessels, repair ships, supply transports. The entire galaxy had mobilized to help, and standing with them thousands of Valrine ships. Small civilian vessels, barely capable of spaceflight, all broadcasting the same message. Humanity saved us, we will not forget. We will not abandon them. Admiral Jiwoo stood on the Indomitable's bridge, watching the display with tears in her eyes. Subin stood beside her, equally moved. I think we made an impression, Subin said quietly. We showed them what humanity is capable of, Jiwoo replied. Both the fighting and the caring. They needed to see both. The ships docked at Luminara Prime's massive repair facilities. Human crew members disembarked to find themselves greeted as heroes. Valrine refugees bowed to every human they saw. Other species, ones that had looked down on humanity for years, now approached with respect. Taemin met Jiwoo at the docking port. He looked tired but proud. The council has been in emergency session for 3 days, he told her. Half of them want to give you medals. The other half are terrified of what humanity proved it could do. We're not interested in medals, Jiwoo said. We're interested in going home and mourning our dead. I understand. But you should know. 7 species have formally requested human military advisors. The Valrine have proposed a permanent alliance. Earth's status in the council has changed overnight. Jiwoo looked around at the station, at the thousands of species, all watching humanity with new eyes. We didn't do this for status. We did it because it was right. I know. That's why it matters so much. A week later, Earth held a memorial service. Every news channel broadcast it. Billions of humans watched as Admiral Jiwoo stood before a wall of names. 3,217 names. Every person who had died defending strangers. Jiwoo's voice was steady as she spoke, but her eyes were wet. These people were soldiers, officers, engineers, doctors, pilots, Marines. They came from every part of Earth. Different languages, different cultures, different beliefs. But they all shared one thing. When they heard someone calling for help, they answered. She paused, looking at the names. The galaxy called us violent, primitive, dangerous. They were afraid of us because we came from a death world, because we knew how to fight. But these people proved something more important. We know why to fight. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. We fight because it's right. We fight because someone has to stand up to the darkness. The crowd was silent, listening. The Valrine will rebuild. 40,000 of them survived because these people said yes to danger, said yes to impossible odds, said yes to standing between innocents and monsters. Jiwoo's voice grew stronger, and when the next call for help comes, because it will come, Earth will say yes again, because that's what we do. That's what they died proving. She placed her hand against the wall of names. Remember them, honor them, and live the kind of lives that make their sacrifice worth it. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humans were no longer just the violent species from the death world. They were the ones who answered when others called, the ones who fought when others hesitated, the ones who proved that strength without compassion was worthless, but compassion backed by strength could change everything. In the Krith territories, deep in space where no council ship dared to go, the hive mind processed what had happened. For the first time in their existence, they had been defeated. Humans had done what no other species could do. The Krith would remember. They would avoid human space. They would think twice before attacking anyone under human protection. The monsters had learned to fear the Deathworlders. On Luminara Prime, Morale stood before the council. She had been asked to speak about her experience, about what she had seen. She looked at the representatives of 17 species, all waiting to hear from her. I watched my world die, she began. I watched the Krith consume everything I loved, and I watched humanity risk everything to save what they could. Not for profit, not for political gain, because we asked for help. She turned to look at Taemin, who stood at the human position. Before this, I thought humans were dangerous. I was right. They are dangerous. But I was wrong about what that meant. They're dangerous to evil. They're dangerous to cruelty. They're dangerous to anyone who thinks innocent people are acceptable losses. Morale faced the council again. The Valrine people propose a formal alliance with Earth. We offer our science, our knowledge, our friendship, and we promise that if humanity ever calls for help, we will answer, just as they answered for us. The proposal passed unanimously. For the first time in Council history, every species voted the same way. Months later, life began to return to normal. The Third Fleet was being rebuilt, new ships, new crew members. But the old members were still there, teaching the new ones, passing on the lessons learned in blood and fire. Admiral Jiwoo was promoted to Fleet Commander, overseeing all Earth Defense Forces. Commander Subin became the new admiral of the rebuilt Third Fleet. Lieutenant Bora was assigned as permanent liaison to the Valrine, helping them establish new colonies. Captain Hyunwoo recovered from his injuries and returned to duty. Pilot Jae-hwan trained new fighter squadrons, making sure they understood that courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about being afraid and doing your job anyway. Master Sergeant Dong Hyun received the highest military honor Earth could give,